I am Lydia Chaudhry. I am the New York campaign coordinator for Nursing for Animals. Dedicated to protecting farmed animals through humane education and advertising programs, grassroots outreach, research, and undercover investigations. Now, as part of our ongoing education programs, we are really privileged today to have a wonderful guest speaker. We are very fortunate to have him here with us talking about vegan nutrition, so please give a very warm welcome to Dr. Michael Greger.
For those of you unfamiliar how this works, every year I go through the 5,000 articles published on human nutrition so you don't have to. Every year the talk is brand new because every year the science is brand new. I then compile all the most interesting, the most groundbreaking, the most practical results into a quiz show format. In a few moments I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. We'll play a few games. If you get the answer right, you get to remain standing. If you get the answer wrong, you need to sit down. And we'll keep going to see who the last person is standing. The prize this year is a new CD-ROM I created containing 1,000 of the latest, greatest scientific articles on nutrition, your own personal nutrition library on a disc. For our remaining contestants, consider the Kuna Indians. Live off of islands off of Panama. One of the healthiest populations on the earth, about 20 times less cancer, 20 times less heart disease than we do. It's not their genes, though. They moved to the mainland, eat like us. Their chronic disease rates skyrocket just like us. But, you know, scientists don't think it's what they eat, but they think it's actually what they drink. What is their secret? They drink more than 5 cups a day of which one of these? Acai berry juice, cocoa, yerba mate out of a gourd, something called quechua, which is a drink made out of fermented quinoa sprouts, or pond scum, spirulina. Who thinks it's acai berry juice? Raise your hand. Who thinks it's cocoa? Who thinks it's mate? Who thinks it's quechua? Who thinks it's spirulina? Well, you don't get to vote. You're sitting there. Okay. Well, it's not the quechua, because there's no such thing. I just made it up. And it's not the mate. And in fact, mate actually increases cancer risk.
Oh, there you go.
They drink in this tropical climate. Oh, and it's not because they have such adorable pigs as pets. It's because they drink cup after cup of cocoa. This year, a major report from an international scientific conference on chocolate finally revealed why we human beings crave chocolate so much. Bit overly technical, but here we go. We can therefore safely conclude that we like chocolate because
It tastes so nice.
it tastes so nice. Last year, a randomized crossover clinical study done from Yale on acute dark chocolate ingestion. They paid people for that too. They found that the sugar in chocolate bad for you. They found that the fat in chocolate, cocoa butter, bad for you. But the cacao solids, which is actually sold as cocoa powder, is wonderful stuff, leading the official journal of the American Heart Association, say that cocoa can be recommended without hesitation because it is so good for you. But which is healthier? Cocoa or Dutch processed cocoa? Who says cocoa is healthier? Who says Dutch cocoa is healthier? All right, well, this is processed cocoa. And when you process foods, you decrease the nutrition. So regular cocoa is better. Buttermilk, number 1, highest level. All right, but wait a second. No one really drinks buttermilk. So what's number 2? 3 remaining. Who thinks number 2 is skim? Who thinks it's reduced? Who thinks it's full? And the answer, number 2, is actually not whole or 2%, but skim milk. is number 2. Scientists have recently found kind of a whole host of these cancer suspects in retail milk. Skim milk is number 2, only to buttermilk for these dozen sex steroid hormones, and we have 1, 2, 3 remaining contestants. All right. And the reason there's actually such high levels is that through dietary and genetic manipulation, as well as the growth hormones, we've been able to force cows to lactate even late into the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, which is good for the industry, but not so good for us, because at the end of their 3rd trimester, these hormone levels really skyrocket, and that's what we may be buying at a retail level. Milk was designed by nature to make things grow like crazy, add a couple 100 pounds in a few months onto baby calves. So good for baby calves, but for adult people who may have a tiny, cancerous prostate tumor or breast tumor, we don't want things growing like crazy. So in a study of 140,000 men last year, 35 grams of dairy protein associated with 76% increase in high-grade prostate cancer risk. That's 2% increased risk for every single gram of milk protein. That's like half a cup of cottage cheese, increasing a man's risk by about 50%. So where do we go from here? Here's what the science says. Our deeply rooted beliefs about the wholesomeness of milk really must be reconsidered. We're just beginning to reassess the effects of milk and dairy products as human foodstuffs. Human beings, look, we're the only species on Earth from the infancy into adulthood that are submitted to this external hormonal manipulation. Milk was developed over the course of evolution as, to only be consumed during infancy, but the consumption of cow's milk in people interferes with the sensitive endocrine regulatory network from infancy into old age. And so while dairy is being reconsidered as human foodstuffs, in the very least, look, given the tumor-promoting effect of one of these hormones in milk, people with cancer should restrict consumption of milk and milk protein. Same applies, look, you have heart disease or even a family history of something like Alzheimer's. So yes, milk has been identified as aggravating the acne epidemic, but it is even more important that this excessive milk consumption can promote diseases, these other chronic diseases. But if people don't drink milk, what happens to their bones? Well, a study was published this year answered the question comparing the bone mineral density of long-term vegans to omnivores. So these are Buddhist nuns, vegan for up to 72 years, matched against same age, same weight, same exercise, omnivorous women who, because of their dairy intake, actually got twice as much calcium in their daily diet compared to the vegans. Who had stronger bones? 3 choices. Vegan stronger, omni stronger, or the same bone mineral density. What do you think? Vegan. Vegans?
Vegan.
Vegans?
Vegan.
And despite twice as much calcium intake, the same bone mineral density at the end of this study. So let me just end with a few updates. What's the latest on eggs? For those of you who came to my last year's talk, I talked about the Harvard physician study. Took 20,000 physicians, followed them out for 20 years, and found that those physicians eating a single egg a day, not an omelet, 1 egg a day, had significantly increased all-cause mortality, also known as total mortality, meaning 1 egg a day, they lived significantly shorter lives because of it. The repercussions keep coming in. This American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. More egg on the medical profession's faces, because we've been the ones telling people to eat eggs. Well, hey, better egg on our faces than actually down our throats, they say. Dr. David Spence, one of the leading stroke experts in the world, he's director of stroke prevention and atherosclerosis research center in Ontario. He ruffled a few feathers this year when he said, based on this latest research, you can eat all the eggs you want if you're dying from a terminal illness. The only people who should regularly eat eggs, because then it doesn't matter, right? You're going to die anyway. Now, the egg industry's nutritionists disagree. To which David replied, look, who do you want to believe? The dietitian who works for the egg industry or a doctor who spent 30 years trying to prevent strokes? I don't have any interest in this at all. They certainly do. They're selling eggs. I am selling stroke prevention. Since the Harvard physician study was published, egg as well as dairy has been correlated to heart failure as well as diabetes in both men and women. A single egg a day or more. Number 1 cause of death in the United States, though, is heart disease. Last year, a landmark review published on the cause of atherosclerosis by a Dr. William Clifford Roberts. First of all, who is this joker? head of Baylor's Cardiovascular Institute, has authored a mere 1,387 scientific articles and has been the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Cardiology for 25 years. Well then, what is the cause of atherosclerosis? Well, doesn't he mean causes? There's lots of things that increase our risk of heart disease. Hypertension, smoking, obesity. No. He says that, according to Dr. Roberts, none of that matters unless our cholesterol is too high. Right? All those other things can speed up the plaque, the buildup of plaque in our arteries. But if our cholesterol levels are low enough, since the plaque itself is made out of cholesterol, if we don't have enough cholesterol in our bodies simply cannot build plaque, period. So it does not occur if cholesterol is low enough. Wait a second, so if cholesterol is the cause of atherosclerosis, how low does our cholesterol have to be for us to be not just low risk, heart attack proof? Number one cause of death, heart attack proof. How low do we have to go? For our LDL, bad cholesterol, ideally under 70. That's tough. Now, if such a goal is created, though, the great scourge of the Western world could be essentially eliminated. There's only two ways to do it. We either put over 100 million people on high-dose statin drugs starting in their 20s, or be what he calls a pure vegetarian fruit eater, which is just what he calls those eating whole foods vegan diets. And so, look, we put 100 million people on statin drugs, and we're going to have thousands of people with side effects. So, of course, a vegetarian fruit diet or vegan diet is the least expensive and safest mean of achieving this plaque-preventing LDL. But few in the Western world are willing to live on the herbivore diet. And so then he says, okay, so let's put drugs on it. We'll put it in the water supply. All right. Recent interview, what's the best way? The best way is to be a non-flesh eater, a non-saturated fat eater. He argues, look, because humans get atherosclerosis and it's only a disease of herbivores, well, look, humans must also be herbivores. And so the cause of our number one killer, elevated cholesterol. So according to the most renowned cardiovascular pathologist in the world, the cause of our number one killer is not eating vegan. Now, just like with diabetes, the same diet that prevents heart disease can be used to not just treat it, but reverse it. Next year is the 20th anniversary of Dr. Dean Ornish's landmark work showing that you can reverse heart disease. Not slow it down, reverse it, open up the arteries, dissolve the plaque with a near-vegan diet. What's Ornish up to these days? Still reversing heart disease. 74% of patients, angina-free, that crushing heart pain for heart patients, 74% gone, no drugs, no surgery, just with diet and exercise. So now that he's conquered number one killer, he's moved on to killer number two, cancer. PSA levels are used to follow the progression of prostate cancer. And so he took prostate cancer patients, put half on plant-based diet, half on the regular diet, and this is what happened. Those on the regular diet got worse. Those on the plant-based diet got better. No chemo, no radiation, no surgery. They just got better. This is an MRI spectrograph showing the decrease in cancer activity after a year on a plant-based diet. And in fact, subsequent studies have shown that you can get significant cancer-fighting effects after just a few weeks. This is very interesting. So what he did, to figure out what was going on, he took blood from both sets of patients and dripped them on human prostate cancer cells in a petri dish. And you drip blood from the standard diet group, and it decreases cancer growth 9%. So their bodies were trying, their immune system was doing its best to fight off the cancer. It was losing, but it was doing its best. But the blood of those on the vegan diet dropped cancer growth rate 70%. The blood of those eating plant-based diet was 8 times more inhospitable to cancer compared to the standard diet group. And again, as I just noted, that was after a year, but look, after just a few weeks, you can see a significant cancer-fighting effect on not only a plant-based diet, but with exercise added as well. So, what's happening, it seems, is that eating vegan actually reprograms gene expression within the prostate gland at a genetic level. So what he did is he took biopsies from their prostate to actually measure what was happening to their genes. And so this is before the plant-based diet, and this is after the plant-based diet. You can kind of subtly see this is kind of more reddish, this is more greenish. The green dots denote the genes within the cancer that are being downregulated by the plant-based diet, before and after. Now, the 2-year follow-up to this very important study, a cancer reversal study, was just published last year. Significant number of people on the regular diet had to go in for what's called a radical prostatectomy, which leaves most men coming out of surgery incontinent, impotent for the rest of their lives. But not a single man in the plant-based diet had to go to surgery. Now, I like to end these talks with my pick for #1 study of the year. But before I get to that, I just wanted to run through a few contenders for last place. Money was spent, for example, sniffing the effect of mugwort mushrooms on the urine odor of aged mice. What about using fish guts for laundry detergent? Or how about taxpayer money, an investigation of the structural aspects of a tomato by means of quantitative nuclear MRIs? It took 2009 till 2009, but now we know what the inside of a tomato looks like. The effects of a horse meat-based Atkins diet on rats was studied, as well as how to improve the gelling properties of ground lizard fish. Because who wants runny lizard fish jello? I mean, what about the sensory and color changes in warty Venus flesh during marination? We didn't know until last year. You've heard, the meat industry tries to get rid of its byproducts. You've heard of soy formula. You've heard of dairy infant formula. How about chicken-based formula for babies? Don't worry, though. The chicken is blenderized so as to be easily sucked. See, I don't just read journals like Plant of Medicine, Phytomedicine. I read the Journal of Muscle Foods. Not foods for muscles, mind you, but foods made out of muscles. What might one find in a nutrition journal of meat? Well, articles on how to starve bunnies, of course. The starved rabbits have the highest ripe meat ratio. Therefore, the best barbecued bunny can be obtained by withholding food. On a lighter note, from a Norwegian medical journal, Flatophonia, the art of the musical anus, is reviewed. The man could blow out candles from yards away. A fartiste. You'll notice that the 13th edition of this book, published in 1727, was not only reviewed by the College of Physicians, but also approved by several ladies of quality. Let me close out with one final round. First, a bit of background. Each one of us has 46 strands of DNA coiled into chromosomes in each one of our cells, and at the tips of those chromosomes is a cap called a telomere, which keeps our DNA from fraying, from unraveling, kind of like the tip of a shoelace. But every time our cells divide, though, a bit of that cap is lost, and when it's completely gone, our cells stop dividing or they die. So our telomeres have been thought of as kind of our life fuse. They start shortening as soon as we're born, and then when they're gone, we're gone. In fact, forensic scientists can take DNA from a blood sample, from a blood stain, and tell you how old the victim was, because they just measure the telomeres and see how old the person is. The thought is, look, if we can slow down this ticking clock, right, slow down this shortening, we may be able to slow down aging and get people to live longer. Right? So what do we have to do? Stop smoking, #1, been shown to significantly eat away at our telomeres. But is there anything in our diet that's worsening the process, accelerating the process, accelerating aging, speeding up aging? We didn't know until last year. Do we have some remaining contestants, or does everyone come up? Remaining contestants? Okay, everybody up. Let's find out. 120 food items. We looked at 2 off the charts in terms of accelerated aging. It wasn't the coffee snipping at the DNA. Krispy Kreme, was it high-fat dairy, non-fried fish, processed meat, red meat, refined grains like Wonder Bread, or non-diet soda, so high-fructose corn syrup-containing soda. We're running out of time. I want to have time for questions, so I'm going to give one away, and that's processed meat. Significantly accelerated. 14 years So they did a blood stain on you. They'd think you were 14 years older if you eat lunch meat. Because your DNA is just such accelerated aging. But which is the other one? Who says coffee? Who says it's fried foods? Who says it's high-fat dairy? Who says it's non-fried fish? Who says it's red meat? Who says it's refined grains? Who says it's sody pop? And the answer, big surprise, non-fried fish. It was the tuna fish. It significantly accelerated aging by about 6 years. I didn't see any hands up. Did anybody get it? No. All right. So in conclusion, it's really the bacon and fish that speeded up aging. But is there any way to actually slow aging down, even potentially reverse the process, lengthen the telomeres back up? Yes, and the study that found out how goes down as my number one pick for study of the year. Dr. Dean Ornish wasn't satisfied with reversing heart disease, reversing cancer. He decided to try his hand at reversing aging as well. There's a plant, a tree called the bristlecone pine, the oldest living thing on the planet. There's one in California, started growing 5,000 years ago when the pyramids were being built, still going strong. Scientists found an enzyme in its roots, which they named telomerase, which actually repairs the telomeres, lengthens them back up. So now that we knew what to look for, we looked in human beings, and we have the enzyme too. The problem is that we never could figure out a way to boost the activity of this enzyme, but that's because we never looked at a vegan diet before. In a study funded by the U.S. Department of Defense, Ornish found that after just 3 months of a plant-based diet and exercise significantly boost telomerase activity. The accompanying editorial celebrated this monumental breakthrough and hoped that this exciting outcome could encourage people to adopt a healthy lifestyle in order to avoid or combat cancer and age-related diseases. And I will leave you on that note. Thank you. Any questions?
How bad is it if you don't eat organic fruit and vegetables?
Fantastic question. How bad is it if we don't choose organic fruits and vegetables? Well, it depends on which fruit and vegetable you're talking about. So, for example, broccoli is not a very pesticide-intensive crop. So, for example, if you look at conventional broccoli, only about 1 in 200 heads of broccoli, conventional broccoli, has any pesticide residues at all. Bugs just don't like broccoli, and so you don't have to spray a lot of pesticides on them. And so if you had limited funds, that may be one of the vegetables that would, if there was a big price differential, you choose one over the other. The most pesticide-contaminated foods in the country are bell peppers, spinach, strawberries, imported grapes like Chilean grapes. These are the kind of things, peaches, these are the kind of things that you'd really want to make sure, if you could, to get organic. Having said that, if we have the means, we should always choose organic for it's better for the earth, better for the workers, etc., on down the road. But one should never, very important, one should never decrease their fruit and vegetable intake out of fear of pesticides. If all you have in front of you is the most pesticide-contaminated fruit in the United States, either a peach or an apple or a Chilean grape, and it's that or nothing, you eat the grape. That the cancer-fighting effects of the grape, it decreases your cancer risk like this, but the pesticide may increase your cancer risk like this, but overall you're lower than when you started before. So one should never let concern about pesticides decrease your fruit and vegetable intake. If you have a choice, always choose organic. But don't avoid fruits and vegetables. They're so incredibly powerful at fighting cancer. But with organic, you just get all benefit, none of the risk. Yes.
Some time ago, there was like this recall of a whole bunch of organic vegetables and stuff, and I think it was like an E. coli scare. How do you find some companies or whatever that would be less prone to that?
I believe you're referring to the spinach recall. So California is a big breadbasket and also one of the top dairy states. And there's these CAFOs, these concentrated animal feeding operations, these so-called dairy factory farms, where they're literally kind of living their feces, kind of ankle, almost knee-deep in their feces. In fact, you go on Route 5, you can see these mass dairies. No forage, no anything, obviously. And that manure runoff, there's just simply too much waste. And it runs off and can contaminate neighboring fields that have dark green leafy vegetables. And the problem is, you may cook the meat, but you may not cook the spinach. You could eat it raw in a salad. And so one could be potentially at risk. And so that's why even if you eat vegan, right, and say, well, I don't have to worry about factory farming or any of these other things because I don't eat that way. You have to, because your fruits and vegetables that your family eats may be contaminated by the factory farming industry. So it's important that everybody, so I'm so excited that Mercy for Animals is here in New York City. We can all join together to fight this for everybody. Not only for our entire communities, to stop this kind of factory farming that leads to contamination of the food supply in general, and not just these meat, eggs, and dairy products. So, for example, alfalfa sprouts, about 200 outbreaks every year, salmonella from alfalfa sprouts, because they put this untreated manure on the alfalfa fields and it gets into the seed. Even if you grow it at home, you can get salmonella from it. So 200 people get salmonella from sprouts. 118,000 people every year get salmonella from eggs. Having said that, you don't want salmonella. If you're interested in sharing this talk with anybody else, the 3-hour version, which goes on for another couple hours, covers a lot more topics I wasn't able to get to. I have copies. It's a 2-disc set. I couldn't fit it on one disc. I also have my older CDs if you're interested in, all sorts of other. They each cover different topics. And all the proceeds I received from the sales, all my books, and the DVDs all goes to charity.